On the morning of July 7, 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower entered the Indian Treaty Room in the Executive Office Building, where 165 members of the overwhelmingly white and male press corps were gathered. One reporter after another plied the president with predictable questions on politics, policy, and foreign affairs. But Ethel Payne had a more pressing issue to address. As the Washington correspondent for the Chicago Defender, the nation's leading black newspaper, she'd carefully formulated a question that reflected the growing hopes of African Americans in the months after the Brown v. Board Supreme Court decision to desegregate schools. Only a few years earlier, Payne, the granddaughter of slaves and the daughter of Chicago's South Side Pullman porter, had been working as a clerk in the bowels of the Chicago Public Library. Now, after a lucky career break and a meteoric rise on the staff of the Chicago Defender, she was one of only 3 accredited African Americans in the White House press corps. With a storied history dating back to 1827, the black press in which Payne found work had unremittingly chronicled racism, eloquently protested injustices, and impassionedly educated its readers. They were our internet. They were our cement that helped keep us together, recalled veteran reporter Vernon Jarrett, whose Negro Newsfront was the first daily radio news broadcast in the United States created by an African American. Now Payne stood nervously before the president. "Mr. President," she began when Eisenhower called on her, and she launched into a long question asking if the administration would support a measure to ban segregation and interstate travel. Her question hit a nerve. Eisenhower drew himself up into his military posture. "You say that you have to have administration support," he barked. "The administration is trying to do what it thinks and believes to be decent and just in this country, and is not in the effort to support any particular or special group of any kind." The room was startled by this brusque reply, nor was it lost on the reporters that Eisenhower had suggested that African Americans and their quest for equality were tantamount to a special interest. A UPI reporter quickly switched the subject to the potential for Hawaiian statehood. But what Payne had learned and why she asked the question that day was that merely asking civil rights questions of the president at a national press conference forced the white media to report on the issue and place it on the national agenda. After her dust-up with Eisenhower, Payne began expanding her reporting to the southern desegregation battleground states. Her stories from the South and her continued nudging presence in the Washington press corps made her one of the civil rights movement's most visible chroniclers for African Americans. Over the next 3 decades, she became known as the First Lady of the Black Press, and as the movement gained traction, Payne went overseas, traveling and reporting from Africa and Asia in the belief that international affairs and civil rights were inextricably linked. Newsmakers never ceased to complain about her aggressiveness. Payne saw herself both as an emissary from and as a representative of a large group of Americans long neglected by the mainstream media. Sadly, only 24 years after her death, she's little remembered, a victim of the very racism she fought as a journalist. Had Ethel Payne not been black, the Washington Post noted in an editorial on her passing in 1991, she certainly would have been one of the most recognized journalists in American society. Ethel Lois Payne's story offers a gentle reminder that the great power of a free press rests on a simple notion of rendering those in power accountable. Payne's journalism invoked none of the angry name-calling fashionable in the news media today. Rather, she brought only one weapon with her when she gained access to the halls of power on behalf of her readers. It was to ask questions that others were not asking. And she got answers.